All right, so we are continuing today My Father's Dragon. Yesterday we ended off where he was coming to the river and we knew that he was getting ready to face some big trouble. We illustrated what we thought that trouble was going to be. And today we're finishing up. Well, we're not finishing, but we're continuing where we left off. So, chapter 5, My Father Meets Some Tigers. The river was very wide and muddy, and the jungle was very gloomy and dense. The trees grew close to each other, and what room there was between them was taken up by great high ferns with sticky leaves. My father hated to leave the beach, but he decided to start along the river bank where at least the jungle wasn't quite so thick. He ate 3 tangerines, making sure to keep all the pills this time, and put on his rubber boots. My father tried to follow the river bank, but it was very swampy. As he went, as as he went further, the swamp became deeper. When it was almost deep enough to his boots, he got stuck in oozy, mucky mud. My father tugged and nearly pulled his boots right off. It's a picture. But at last he managed to wade to a drier place. Here, the jungle was so thick that he could hardly see where the river was. He unpacked his compass and figured out the direction that he should walk in order to stay near the river. But he didn't know that the river made a very sharp curve away from him just a little way beyond, and so he walked straight ahead and he was getting further and further away from the river. It was hard to walk in the jungle. The sticky leaves of the ferns caught my father's hair, and he kept tripping over roots and rotten logs. Sometimes the trees were clumped so closely together that he couldn't squeeze between them and had to walk a long way around. He began to hear whispery noises, but he couldn't see any animals anywhere. The deeper in the jungle he went, the surer he was that something was following him, and he thought that he heard whispering noises on both sides of him as well as behind. He tried to run, but he tripped over more roots and the noises only came nearer. Once or twice he thought he heard something laughing at him. At last, he came out into a clearing and ran right into the middle of it so he could see anything that might try to attack him. He was surprised when he looked around and saw 14 green eyes coming out of the jungle all around the clearing, and when the green eyes turned into 7 tigers. The tigers walked around him in a big circle, looking hungrier and all the time, and they sat down and began to talk. I suppose you thought we didn't know you were trespassing in our jungle. Then the next tiger spoke. I suppose you're going to say that you didn't know it was our jungle. Did you not know that one explorer has ever left our island alive? Said the third tiger. My father thought of the cat and knew that this wasn't true. But of course, he had too much sense to say so. One doesn't contradict a hungry tiger. The tigers went on taking turns. You're our first little boy, you know. I'm curious to know if you're especially tender. Maybe you think we have regular meal times, but we don't. We just eat whenever we're feeling hungry, said the fifth tiger. And we are very hungry right now. In fact, I can hardly wait, said the sixth. I can't wait, said the seventh. And then all the tigers said together in a loud roar, let's begin right now. And they moved in closer. My father looked at those 7 hungry tigers, and then he had an idea. He quickly opened his knapsack and took out the chewing gum. The cat had told him that tigers were especially fond of chewing gum, which was very weird on this island. So he threw them each a piece of gum, but they only growled. As fond as we are of chewing gum, we'd sure like to eat you even better. And they moved so close that he could feel them breathing on his face. But this is a very special chewing gum, said my father. If you keep on chewing it long enough, it will turn green. And then if you plant it, it will grow more chewing gum. And the sooner you start chewing, the sooner you'll have more. The tiger said, well, why don't you say? Isn't that fine? And each one wanted to be the first to plant the chewing gum. So they all unwrapped their pieces and began chewing as hard as they could. Every once in a while, the tiger would look in another's mouth and say, nope, it's not done yet. Until finally they were all so busy looking in each other's mouths to make sure that no one was getting ahead that they completely forgot about my father. Chapter 6, My Father Meets a Rhinoceros. My father soon found a trail leading away from the clearing. All sorts of animals might be using it too, but he decided to follow the trail no matter what, because it might lead to the dragon. He kept a sharp lookout in front of him and behind him, but he went on. Just as he was feeling quite safe, he came around a curve right behind two wild boars. One of them was saying to the other, "Did you know that the tortoise thought that they saw Monkey carrying his sick grandmother to the doctor last night? But Monkey's grandmother died a week ago, so they must have seen something else. Wonder what it was." "I told you there was an invasion afoot," said the other boar, "and I intend to find out what it is. I can simply not stand invasions." "Me neither," said a tiny voice. Me neither." And my father knew that the mouse was there. "Well," said the first boar, "you search the trail up this way to the dragon, and I'll go back down the other way to the big clearing, and we'll send Mouse to watch the ocean rocks in case the invasion should decide to go away before we find it." My father hid behind the mahogany tree just in time, and with the first boar walking right past him, my father waited for the other boar to get a head start on him, but he didn't wait long because he knew when the first boar saw the tigers chewing gum in the clearing, he would become even more suspicious. Soon the trail crossed a little brook, and my father, who by this time was very thirsty, stopped to get a drink of water. He stood on his rubber boots, so he waded into a little pool of water, and as he was stooping down, something sharp picked him up by the seat of his pants and shook him very hard. "Don't you know this is my private weeping pool?" said a deep, angry voice. My father couldn't see who was talking because he was hanging on in the air over the pool, but he said, "Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't know that everybody had a private weeping pool." And we talked about weeping. We talked about what that meant yesterday. Weeping means crying, so he has a private weeping pool. "Everybody doesn't," said the angry voice, "but I do because I have such a big thing to weep about, and I drown everybody, and I use my weeping pool." With that, the animal tossed my father up and down over the water. "What is it that you weep about so much?" asked my father, trying to get his breath as he thought over all the things that he had in his backpack. "Oh, I have many things to weep about, but the big thing is the color of my tusk." My father squirmed every which way, trying to see the tusk, but it was through the seat of his pants where he couldn't possibly see it. "When I was a young rhinoceros, my tusk was pearly white," said the animal, and my father knew he was hanging on by the seat of his pants from a rhinoceros tusk. "But it turned a nasty yellow and gray in my old age, and I found it very ugly, you see. Everything about me's ugly. When I had a beautiful tusk, I didn't worry so much about the rest. But now that my tusk is ugly too, I can't sleep. I just stay up at night thinking about how completely ugly I am, and I weep all the time." "But why should you be telling me these things? I caught you using my pool, and now I'm going to drown you." "Oh, wait a minute, Rhinoceros," said my father. "I have something that'll make your tusk all white and beautiful again. Just let me down, and I'll give them to you." The Rhinoceros said, "You do?" "I can hardly believe it. Well, I'm so excited." He put my father down and danced around in a circle while my father got out a tube of toothpaste and the toothbrush. "Now," said my father, "just move your tusk a little nearer, please, and I'll show you how to begin." My father wet the brush in the pool, squeezed a dab of toothpaste, and scrubbed very hard in one tiny spot. Then he told the rhinoceros to wash it off, and when the pool was calm again, he told the rhinoceros to look in the water and see how white the little spot was. It was hard to see in the dim light of the jungle, but sure enough, the spot shone pearly white, just like new. The rhinoceros was so pleased that he grabbed the toothbrush and began scrubbing violently, forgetting all about my father. Just then, my father heard footsteps, and he jumped behind the rhinoceros. It was the boar coming from the big clearing where the tigers were chewing gum. The boar looked at the rhinoceros and the toothbrush and the tube of toothpaste, and then scratched his ear on a tree. "Tell me, Rhinoceros," he said, "where did you get that fine tube of paste and that toothbrush?" "Too busy," said the rhinoceros, as he went on brushing as hard as he could. The boar sniffed angrily and trotted down the trail towards the dragon, muttering to himself, "Very suspicious. Tigers too busy chewing gum, rhinoceros too busy brushing his tusk. Must get a hold of that invasion. I don't like it one bit, not one bit. It's upsetting everybody terribly. I wonder what it's doing here anyways." Chapter 7, My Father Meets a Lion. All right, we'll pick up right there.